The Supreme Court confirmation hearings this week, it was almost, Jonathan, a tale of two. It was as if two nominees were sitting there. Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson, to listen to the Democratic senators, you would think this was a supremely qualified woman who'd served for almost a decade in the federal courts. To listen to Republicans, she's soft on crime. She tends to give lenient sentences to people who've engaged in child abuse. What did you make of the senators, of the process of the nominee?
How much time do we have, Judy? I know we don't have a lot of time. It was as if we were watching, yes, the Supreme Court nomination hearings of Ketanji Brown Jackson, but also a relitigation of the Supreme Court confirmation hearings for Justice Kavanaugh on one level. Democrats doing their level best to remind people of just how qualified Judge Brown Jackson is, how qualified, beyond qualified she is to serve on the high court. And the Republicans did everything they could to tear her down, belittle her experience, call her everything but a child of God, telling a mother that she is not just soft on crime, but is fine with people peddling in child pornography. It was just appalling. And I think that what Senator Booker, who is even more loquacious than I am, his oration that made her cry, I would have cried if my in-laws and my mother weren't also sitting in the living room as we watched this. When I saw her wiping away the tears, I felt that in my bones because I understood where that emotion was coming from. You know, in the Black community, we call everyone brother and sister, that brother over there, that sister over there. And it really wasn't until watching that I really understood what that meant. I'm about 3 years older than Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson. I'm an only child. I don't know her. I've never met her. But watching her sit there, as we're looking at that picture right now, I felt as if I was watching a relative go through hell. And to have Senator Booker remind her, but remind the country of why she's there, how hard she worked, how qualified she is, and to not let anyone rob her of her joy, how important that was. She loves her country. She's interviewing for a job she's always wanted, and yet we had people there just trashing her in ways. We work so hard as African Americans to get to these spots and to stay in these spots, and to have to jump through these hoops and be questioned by people who aren't even at our level, but yet that's what we have to do to get in the tent, get a seat at the table, and then to keep that seat.
What did you make of it?
Yeah, well, moved by that.
Yeah.
You know, we have a group of Republican senators who are not really senators. They're cable TV hosts. And they use these hearings as an occasion to drag up whatever issue is popular with Tucker. And so whether it's what is a woman or whatever it's going to be, they're going to ask her about that. They're not going to ask her about judicial philosophy. They're not going to ask about temperament. They're just going to ask about whatever the issue of the moment is. And it reached its apogee with Ted Cruz, who I spoke about nicely last week. It goes back to being a schmuck this week.
We don't remember that.
Yeah. He makes a big kerfluffle and then leans back and checks out how he's doing on Twitter. It's like the perfect cycle of Narcissus. And so these are not hearings. On the pornography issue, Andy McCarthy, who's a conservative writer for National Review, who happened to be a prosecutor for 20 years, says her position that there should not be mandatory minimums for people who simply possess some child pornography is absolutely the right position. And this is the standard position because some people they're stupid and they do something terrible, but they shouldn't get a 5-year minimum because they're not fundamentally criminals. And so this is McCarthy's case, and that's her case. But Josh Hawley treats her like she's soft on child abuse. And so that's just a distortion of the record.
Senator Booker.
Thank you very much. Judge, after me, only 5 to go.
But sit back for a second, because I don't have questions right away. I actually have a number of things I just want to say, because this has been not a surprise, given the history that we all know, not a surprise, but perhaps a little bit of a disappointment, some of the things that have been said in this hearing. The way you have dealt with some of these things, that's why you are a judge and I am a politician, because you have sat with grit and grace and have shown us just extraordinary demeanor during the times where people were saying things to you that are actually out of the norm. I had to go up dais to ask some of my more senior colleagues about what I feel like is a dangerous precedent. People are taking 1,000 cases you've been over, is that right? I'm sorry, I said you wouldn't ask you questions, but just give me
something like that.
Something like that. And from what I understand is that these cases are often take days, weeks, sometimes months, right?
To decide in a case?
Yeah.
Yes.
There's a trial sometimes. And the folks are taking any of those cases and just trying to pick pieces out. And so my colleague, Senator Hawley, has been doing this all into the lead up and saying things, tweeting things that I think that a lot of us, when I was just trying to get some advice here, is this is what the new standard is going to be. That any judge coming before us that has ever chosen outside of the sentencing guidelines, below the sentencing guidelines, we're creating this environment now where I could make myself the hero of people who have been victims of some horrible crime and suddenly put whatever judge I want on the defensive by trying to drag out little bits when they have no context to the case. None of the facts. They're seeking to exploit the complexities of a criminal justice system, the reason why we have a third branch of government. I feel bad that there was a judge mentioned by name in this hearing that's from Senator Hawley's state. What is that judge going to think next time they have a complicated sexual abuse case that comes before them, and they know that they could possibly be called out if they go below the sentencing guidelines, which I showed you yesterday in my lack of chart. If you remember, I was uncharted. But that you are deciding completely in the norm. 70+% in many states of people are doing just like you did. But I'm a Democratic senator. I've never quoted from this very well-respected conservative periodical. This is the National Review. Very well-respected. They're not necessarily something I agree with all the time. But here's what the National Review, this is the title. Senator Hawley's disingenuous attack against Judge Jackson's record on child pornography. I'll just read the first paragraph. I would oppose Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson because of her judicial philosophy for the reasons I outlined last week. I addressed that in a separate post. For now, I want to discuss the claim by Senator Josh Hawley that Judge Jackson is appallingly soft on child pornography offenders. This is the kicker here. The allegations appear meritless to the point of demagoguery. I got letters from leaders of victims' rights groups, survivors of assault, all saying sort of the same thing with the National Review. Feel proud about yourself. You brought together right and left in this calling out of people that will sit up here and try to pull out from cases and try to put themselves in a position where they're the defenders of our children. To a person who has children, to a person whose family goes out in streets and defends children. I mean, this is a new low. And what's especially surprising about this is it didn't happen last year. You were put on a court that I'm told is considered like the second most powerful court in our land. And you were passed with bipartisan support. Nobody brought it up then. Did they not do their homework? Were they lax? Did they make a mistake? I wonder, as they ask you the question, do you regret? I wonder if they regret that. that they didn't bring that out. No, why? Because it was an allegation that is meritless to the point of demagoguery. You are, I don't mean this in any way, because if anybody called me average, I would be upset, but you are a mainstream judge. Your sentencing, I've looked at the data, falls in the mainstream on everything from child sexual assault to all the other issues that people are trying to bring up. Some of these things that are being cast at you, that you called George Bush a war criminal, come on, that is painful. Especially because, as you said, the brief change, these are names that you have to put in. And we're talking about a real issue that goes to the core of our values, torture. Barack Obama was named once Bush left office. There is an absurdity to this that is, it is almost comical if it was not so dangerous. Because the next time a judge comes before us on the right or the left that has a body of work like you do, gosh, one of the, some performance artists on our side could pull out one of the cases where they were below the sentencing guideline, say, for example, it was on something like as horrific as rape that we all agree is horrific, and they can suddenly put themselves as the defense. How dare we put someone who's soft on crime? Well, are you soft on crime? God bless America. I got this great text. I've become really good friends with the folks at the FOP from my negotiations. And this was my favorite text. You all got to get this. I think my brother Kennedy might get a kick out of this. He goes, things that are uncountable, stars in the sky, grains of sand on the beach, and the number of times Democrats will mention that the FOP endorsed Judge Jackson in this hearing. But let me mention it again. Just in case my people say you're rough on crime folks really want to try to make that stick. You were endorsed by the largest organization of rank and file police officers. You were endorsed by the bosses, the largest organization of chiefs of police. And you were endorsed by Noble, who I hope people find out more about that organization. You got uncles that are officers. You got a brother, not just an officer, who went to serve after 9/11. Your family's not soft on terrorism. He went out there to capture and kill and defend this country from terrorists. I actually sitting back here and finding this astonishing, but then I do my homework. I love that my colleague brought up Constance Baker Motley. You know, when she was getting to the floor of the Senate, they were trying to stop her with outrageous accusations. You know what the accusation was back then? She was a communist. Dragging up stories, trying to throw anything that they might stick. But this is what you and I know. Any one of us senators could yell as loud as we want that Venus can't return a serve. We could yell as loud as we want that Beyonce can't sing. We could yell as much as we want that astronaut Mae Jemison didn't go all that high. But you know what? They got nothing to prove. As it says in the Bible, let the work I've done speak for me. Well, you have spoken. You started speaking as a little girl, watching that man right there try to raise a family and study law while your mama supported everybody. You spoke in high school when you started distinguishing yourself. And you know what you said when they told you you couldn't go to Harvard? Watch me. I went to law school. I didn't serve on the law review. You did. I didn't clerk at every level of the federal court. You clerked for a Supreme Court justice, one widely respected on both sides, which really shaped you. You left there and you went to private practice, and you know what you found? This is what you told me. That you had those tough choices that working moms have to make, the demands of a private law firm, raising your kids. It just didn't add up. You went before this Senate 3 times in a bipartisan manner. God bless America. We don't do that much stuff bipartisan around here. You went to become a public defender because you wanted to understand all aspects of the law. Who does that? We live in a society that's very materialistic sometimes, very, very consumeristic. You went into, do people become public defenders for the money? No. Your family and you speak to service, service, service. And I'm telling you right now, I'm not letting anybody in the Senate steal my joy. I told you this at the beginning. I'm embarrassed. It happened earlier today. I just look at you and I start getting full of emotion. I'm jogging this morning, and I'm at the end of the block I live on. And I get terrified because I put my music on loud when I'm jogging, trying to block out the noise of the heart attack I'm having. And this woman comes up on me, practically tackles me, an African-American woman. And the look on her eyes, she just wanted to touch me, because I'm sitting so close to you, and tell me what it meant to her to watch you sitting where you're sitting. And you did not get there because of some left-wing agenda. You didn't get here because of some dark money groups. You got here how every black woman in America who's gotten anywhere has done, by being, like Ginger Rogers said, I did everything Fred Astaire did, but backwards in heels. And so I'm just sitting here saying, nobody's stealing my joy. Nobody's going to make me angry, especially not people that are called in a conservative magazine demagogic for what they're bringing up that just doesn't hold water. I'm not going to let my joy be stolen, because I know you and we appreciate something that we get that a lot of my colleagues don't. I know Tim Scott does. When I first came to this place, I was the 4th black person ever popularly elected to the United States Senate. And I still remember a lot of mixed people, white folks, black folks work here, but at night when people are in line to come in to clean this place, the percentage of minorities shift a lot. And so I'm walking here, first week I'm here, and somebody who's been here for decades doing the urgent work of the Senate, but it's the unglamorous work that goes on no matter who's in offices. The guy comes up to me, all he wants to say, I can tell, is, I'm so happy you're here. But he comes up and he can't get the words out. And this man, my elder, starts crying. And I just hugged him. And he just kept telling me, it is so good to see you here. It's so good to see you here. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I love my brother Tim Scott. We could write a dissertation on our disagreements. He gave the best speech on race. I wish I could have given good of a speech. But talking to the challenges and indignities that are still faced. And you're here. I was in the White House with my Democratic colleagues, and I'm in my joy. I can't help it. and the president's asking our advice, who should we nominate and whatever. And I look at Kamala and we have a knowing glance, which we've had for years when she and I used to sit on this end of this committee at times. And then I try to get out to the president what it means. What it means. And I want to tell you, when I look at you, this is why I get emotional. I'm sorry, you're a person that is so much more than your race and gender. You're a Christian, you're a mom, you're an intellect, you love books, but for me, I'm sorry, it's hard for me not to look at you and not see my mom, not to see my cousins, one of them who had to come here and sit behind you. She had to have your back. I see my ancestors and yours. Nobody's going to steal the joy of that woman in the street, or the calls that I'm getting, or the texts. Nobody's going to steal that joy. You have earned this spot. You are worthy. You are a great American. Your hero is Constance Baker Motley. Mine, she has sat on my desk for my offices that I've held. She's my icon of America. Her name is Harriet Tubman. There is a love in this country that is extraordinary. You admitted it about your parents. They loved this nation, even though there were laws preventing them from getting together. When they were loving, there were laws in this country that would have prevented you from marrying your husband. It wasn't that long ago, it was last generation. But they didn't stop loving this country, even though this country didn't love them back. And what were the words of your heroes and mine? What did Constance Baker Motley do? Did she, this country that she saw insults and injuries, when she came out of law school, law firms wouldn't even hire her because she was a woman. Did she become bitter? Did she try to create a revolution? No, she used the very constitution of this nation. She loved it so much, she wanted America to be America. As Langston Hughes wrote, "Oh, let America be America again." The land that never has been yet, but yet must be the land where everyone is free. Oh, yes, I say it plain, America never was America to me, but I swear this oath, America will be. That is the story of how you got to this desk, you and I and everyone here, generations of folk who came here and said, America, I'm Irish. You may say, no, Irish or dogs need to fly, but I'm going to show this country that I can be free here. I can make this country love me as much as I love it. Chinese Americans first forced into near slave labor, building our railroads, connecting our country, saw the ugliest of America, but they were going to build their home here and say, America, you may not love me yet, but I'm going to make this nation live up to its promise and hope. LGBTQ Americans, from Stonewall women to Seneca, hidden figures who didn't even get their play until some Hollywood movie finally talked about them and how they were critical for us defying gravity. All of these people loved America. And so you faced insults here that were shocking to me. Well, actually not shocking. But you are here because of that kind of love. And nobody's taken this away from me. So you got 5 more folk to go through. 5 more of us. And then you can sit back and let us have all the debates. And I'm going to tell you, it's going to be a well-charted Senate floor because it's not going to stop. They're going to accuse you of this and that. Heck, in honor of your person who shares your birthday, you might be called a communist. But don't worry, my sister. Don't worry. God has got you. And how do I know that? Because you're here. And I know what it's taken for you to sit in that seat. Harriet Tubman is one of my heroes because the more I read about this person, the more, she was viciously beaten. For her whole life, she used to fall into spells, cracked skull. She faced starvation, chased by dogs. And when she got to freedom, what did she do? Did she rest? No, she went back. Again and again and again. The sky was full of stars. But she found one that was a harbinger of hope for better days, not just for her and those people that were enslaved, but a harbinger of hope for this country. And she never gave up on America. She fought led troops in the Civil War. She was involved in the suffrage movement. And as I came back from my run, after being near assaulted by someone on the street, I thought about her and how she looked up. She kept looking up. No matter what they did to her, she never stopped looking up. And that star, it was a harbinger of hope. Today, you're my star. You are my harbinger of hope. This country is getting better and better and better. And when that final vote happens, and you ascend onto the highest court in the land, I'm going to rejoice. And I'm going to tell you right now, the greatest country in the world, the United States of America, will be better because of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Kennedy, and now Senator Padilla. Mr. Chairman, before I begin, I know you're being very mindful of the clock, so I just want to say I have two initial, more substantive questions, and then I think two very brief questions, but are very important. So I'll get right to it. Judge Jackson, I am so glad that you take some pride in sharing your family's story, as you should. I know I take pride in sharing mine. My colleagues have heard it, but I never get tired of reminding folks that I am the proud son of immigrants. My parents came to the United States from Mexico decades ago, and through their hard work and determination, they raised three of us. My sister, my brother, and I, we all attended and graduated from college, and we've all found successful careers in public service. Now, it's a story that is shared by hardworking immigrant families across the country. And over the course of generations, families who work diligently each day to create a better life and to contribute to the country. Whether it's as farm workers, short order cooks, celebrity chefs, software engineers, or tech CEOs, as school custodians, teachers, principals, whether they're documented or undocumented, people who migrate to this country seeking asylum, seeking refuge, or a shot at the American dream, all deserve to be treated with dignity and humanity. Now, unfortunately, our laws and our courts don't always do that. Beyond our often cruel and counterproductive choices that we've made over the years when it comes to immigration policy, the language that we use to speak about immigrants can often have dehumanizing effects. For example, in the Immigration and Nationality Act, it's replete with references to quote-unquote aliens. And court opinions written by federal judges across the country can be found referring to undocumented persons as, quote, illegal aliens. Now, I know NASA has put a man on the moon, and there are billionaires increasingly exploring space, but let's be clear, no person is an alien, and no human being can be illegal. So with that context, I read your immigration-related decisions on the district court with great interest. Now, beyond the substance of your opinions, what stood out to me is that you seem to have tried to avoid making the same choice as many of your predecessors and many of your colleagues. When not quoting statutes or precedent, your opinions appear not to refer to immigrants as alien or illegal. Instead, use terms such as undocumented and non-citizen. I hope that was a conscious choice. The language we use and the language our courts use to describe people, whether immigrants, the formerly incarcerated, individuals who identify as LGBTQ, or other historically marginalized people, really matters a great deal. Our language matters. It's exactly for that reason that 6 years ago, Congress passed a bill to remove derogatory and offensive references to Black Americans, Asian Americans, and Native Americans from the U.S. Code. And it's why last year President Biden ordered the Customs and Border Protection Agency and ICE to stop referring to migrants as illegal immigrants. With all that said, Judge Jackson, do you agree that the language we use to describe one another and the language used by the bench matters?
Thank you, Senator. As I mentioned earlier in this hearing, judges are the only branch of government who are required to write our opinions, to explain our decisions. And I have long believed in that capacity, that our clarity and language matters. We're explaining the law to people, and people read and understand what the law is, what the rule of law is in this country through the opinions of judges. So they do matter, language.
Thank you. Now I want to discuss with you an issue of law and technology, an issue previously raised by Senator Ossoff earlier today, and I'm excited to talk to you about this topic. Just as an aside, any day that an MIT engineer gets to question a Harvard lawyer, it's a good day. So thank you for indulging. But as you know, the Supreme Court only hears a tiny fraction of all federal appeals. That means that the cases that get to the Supreme Court are typically either new questions of law or very difficult questions of law. And I think the intersection of law and technology is one where many cases are both new and difficult. Over the course of human history, innovation has constantly disrupted our culture and our norms. And for the most part with good intentions, but societal benefits have not always been the result of innovation. Innovations have challenged us to respond with new means of safeguarding basic rights, whether in the context of privacy, security, competition, employment, just to name a few. And I appreciate that the speed of innovation will always challenge our ability to keep the law up to date with new technologies and their impact. I've grappled with this question as a city council member, as a state senator, as a secretary of state, and now as a United States senator. But clearly, it's also a challenge for the courts, which often have to decide cases during that period between technological progress and the enactment of new laws that seek to account for that progress. Now, new technology alone has given rise to a number of fundamental questions of law, as you mentioned yesterday and earlier, including how the Fourth Amendment applies to new contexts that no founder could have ever contemplated. And likewise, the court has to grapple with questions like how copyright law applies to computer code. And in the coming years, new technologies will present new questions, not just in the context of the Fourth Amendment, but in areas of communications, energy, transportation, healthcare, and many others. So if you can take just a minute, Judge, to discuss the challenges that courts at every level face in addressing cases involving new and emerging technologies, and how you, as a Supreme Court justice, would begin to prepare for these types of cases.
Thank you, Senator. The court does get cases that involve disputes that touch on technological innovation, whether it is something like copyright kind of case, or a patent kind of case, or the Fourth Amendment search and seizure. New technologies do intersect with what the law says in the Constitution and in statutes. And at least as far as statutes are concerned, it's certainly much easier for judges who are doing their duty to interpret the law if Congress makes changes that update the statutes to track the modern innovations. What happens with constitutional interpretation is similar to what I described earlier about cases in which the court analogizes back to the time of the founding concerning the principles in something like search and seizure, what qualified as a search that violated the Constitution when those words were written, and then determines whether that same kind of violation is at issue with respect to the technology today. And the court has done that with respect to searches regarding cell phones, police access to GPS data, tracking technology that is put on vehicles, because these disputes do come up. And so, so I'll take this opportunity to encourage Congress to help us by ensuring that new technologies are addressed in statutes that we interpret.
You're absolutely right. Both judges and members of Congress are never done doing more homework and learning, hopefully. Judge, on Monday, which at this point feels like so long ago, I suggested in my opening statement that by the end of these hearings, America would know just how qualified you are to serve on the Supreme Court. And over the course of this hearing, I think the American people have seen that and have gotten to know you as a person. They have heard your family's journey and everything that your nomination represents. Now, I also said on Monday that your qualifications bear repeating over and over again. And so, Judge, with your help, I'd like to remind the committee and the American people once again just some of your incredible credentials. Yes or no, after law school, did you serve as a law clerk for a district court judge, a court of appeals judge, and a Supreme Court justice?
I did, Senator.
Yes or no, did you practice law for more than 10 years before becoming a judge?
Yes, Senator.
And did that include time in private practice and time as a federal public defender?
It did.
How many years have you served as a federal district court judge?
I served as a federal district court judge for, I believe, 8.5 years.
And circuit since then?
Circuit since last June.
And as a district court judge, approximately how many opinions did you write? I think we've covered this before.
As a district court judge, I believe I wrote somewhere in the neighborhood of 560.
With a very low rate of having been reversed, if I've done my homework correctly. Look, I can go on, and don't worry, Mr. Chairman, I won't. But Judge Jackson, for 2 days, here's what I've seen. I've seen a number of my colleagues trying to engage with you in good faith on questions about the law, and you've answered them fully, fairly, and thoughtfully in every instance. You've shown yourself to have the keen intellect and legal acumen to serve on the Supreme Court. Now, you've also sat here and politely listened as some of my colleagues have attempted to disparage your judgment and character based on allegations that even, as Senator Booker pointed out, conservative commentators have called meritless to the point of demagoguery. And through that, you've shown clearly that you have the temperament to serve on the Supreme Court. Now, this confirmation hearing has been a reminder, and in some ways, a new Exhibit A, that for people of color, particularly those who have the audacity to try to be the first, often have to work twice as hard to get half the respect. Judge Jackson, I offer that with your talent and exemplary qualifications on full display, if my colleagues truly believe in maintaining the legitimacy of the Supreme Court, if they really care about Americans' faith in the judicial system, they will see that even if they may disagree with you on a particular area of the law, that you're exactly the type of judge that should serve on the Supreme Court. You're exactly the type of judge that should receive bipartisan support, not just from this committee, but from the full Senate. And if any senator doesn't, then I hope they'll think long and hard about what it says to the country about the politicization of the Supreme Court. That if someone is eminently qualified as Judge Jackson in all the ways that we've been discussing, cannot receive bipartisan support. Judge, and there's just a couple minutes left, and I'd like to ask you just one last question. Last Friday, in my preparation for these hearings, I took the opportunity to spend some time with a group of students at South San Francisco High School. I went there to speak with them about this historic Supreme Court nomination and to speak with them about you. We had a great conversation about how the court's decisions affect the everyday lives of Americans and about the past and the future of the Supreme Court. But as I was speaking with the students, I couldn't help but be reminded of my own high school experience, when one of my teachers discouraged me from applying to MIT because they didn't want me to be disappointed. I turned that discouragement into motivation. Judge Jackson, I know that you too have been doubted on your way to the seat that you find yourself in today. Even over the last 3 days of this hearing, your experience and qualifications have been called into question by some, despite your clear, lengthy record of talent, achievement, and accomplishment. So I want to end my time today by asking you this question. On behalf of the young people I visited with last Friday in South San Francisco, and for the many others across the country who are watching this confirmation hearing today, what would you say, Judge Jackson, to all those young Americans, the most diverse generation in our nation's history? What do you say to some of them who may doubt that they can one day achieve the same great heights that you have?
Thank you, Senator. That was very moving. And I appreciate the opportunity to speak to young people. I appreciate it very much. I do it a lot for the reasons that you have articulated. I hope to inspire people to try to follow this path because I love this country, because I love the law, because I think it is important that we all invest in our future. And the young people are the future. And so I want them to know that they can do and be anything. And I'll just say that I will tell them what an anonymous person said to me once. I was walking through Harvard Yard my freshman year. As I mentioned, I went to public school, and I didn't know anything about Harvard until my debate coach took me there to enter a speech competition, and I thought, this is a great university. It was basically one of the only ones I'd seen, and I said, maybe I'll apply when I'm a senior. But I get there, and whoa, so different. I'm from Miami, Florida. Boston is very cold. It was rough. It was different from anything I'd known. There were lots of students there who were prep school kids like my husband, who knew all about Harvard, and that was not me. And I think the first semester I was really homesick. I was really questioning, do I belong here? Can I make it in this environment? And I was walking through the yard in the evening, and a black woman I did not know was passing me on the sidewalk, and she looked at me, and I guess she knew how I was feeling. And she leaned over as we crossed and said, "Persevere." I would tell them to persevere.
Thank you, Judge Jackson. You don't have to hope. I'll tell you right now, you do inspire. You are an inspiration.
Thank you.
And I will associate myself with the closing words of my colleague and my brother, Senator Booker, that I too refuse to let anyone steal my joy. Thank you, Mr. Chair.